Welcome to the Fantasy Six Pack NFL Betting Show. I'm your host, Alan Sandich. Today, I'm going to give you the NFL Week One best bets that I have so far. We'll go over the spreads. I won't cover over unders per se this week in Week One. I like to build a little bit of data before I start jumping into those. The same goes for props. I like to build a little bit of data before I start jumping into those as well. But I will have a teaser for you. And I am currently participating in the 2023 Westgate SuperContest. So each week, I'm going to give you the 5 plays that I want to put on my contest, and then also some honorable mention plays that you guys can look at because the lines may or may not change for some of the games as well. And that'll help you kind of get an idea of where you should be looking. But before we start, obviously, you can get access to more betting advice along with our award-winning rankings, custom advice on Discord, and more. Use the promo code F6P NFL for 15% off all of our available options. All right, so we are coming into Week One. Usually there's a little bit of hesitation for newcomers, but not the professionals. They kind of have an idea. A lot of them have years and years of data. Last year was my best year betting NFL ever. And I developed a system where I took advantage of some of the trends that typically happen in the NFL season. Last year was definitely a good year for the dog, especially early. So what I would do is my 5 picks in the contest, I would pick 3 dog plays that I really like taking the points, and then I would pick 2 favorites that I really like laying the points. And that developed into a pretty good percentage for me, around 65-66% in the my bookie super contest. Because I did so well in the super contest for my bookie is why I entered into the one in Vegas. I want to give it a shot against what some people would consider the Super Bowl of gambling contest. So that is part of my background, part of my strategy. The NFL season is a long season. It is a grind. Don't get too down on yourself. If you go 0-5, hold yourself accountable for sure, and just morph with the weeks. We do projections all the time as fans, and teams oftentimes don't live up to those expectations. Know when to get out. Don't hang on too long. And prime example of that last year, the New York Giants, one of the best ATS teams out there, started out hot. Money line wise, I think they were over 55% as dogs, which is phenomenal for the NFL. But you don't want to just bet them every single week. You got to be calculated. And so hopefully, as the gambling advisor here and just in general, we grow like that throughout the year. Without further ado, let me just jump into it. Thursday night, we've got a big game Thursday night. It is the Lions versus the Chiefs. The Lions are 6.5 right now, point dogs. The over-under is at 54.5. I will say that I use Action Network, the app. They will show you the percentage of the bets that have been put on the tickets. They'll show you the percentage of the money. Oftentimes, when it comes to NFL, you want to fade the public per se. And they have a sharp indicator and all kind of other little tools that they use to kind of help you decide what's the sharp play, what's the public play. It doesn't always align that the public is wrong. However, generally speaking with the NFL, if you follow the sharp bets, you're going to make some money. Some of the key points here that I was looking at that I think is good information for folks. Both QBs, Patrick Mahomes and Jared Goff, are great against the spread in Week 1. Patrick Mahomes is 4-1 against the spread in Week 1, and Jared Goff is 6-0 against the spread in Week 1. 2-0 as a Lions starting QB. He was 4-0 with the Rams. The last time these teams played was 2019. The Lions hosted the Chiefs. The Lions were giving 7.5 as the home team, and they covered that by 3. I think it was like 34-30 was the final score. Covered it by 3.5. So the Lions covered it about 3.5. Before this podcast, I checked. There was a plus 25% differential with the Lions. 35% of the tickets were on the Lions, but 60% of the money was on the Lions to cover the spread as well. No major line movement so far. About 5 cent difference in the odds on most sites. You get the Lions at plus 6.5, minus 105. Other sites have it minus 110. But it seems like the consensus right now is that the Chiefs won't cover, but the game is going to go over. Some interesting tidbits about that. The over is 5-0 in Patrick Mahomes' last 5 opening days. So that's something to think about. People maybe worried about the Super Bowl hangover. Hasn't really been a thing with Kansas City. Hasn't really been a thing with the Chiefs, and honestly, hasn't really been a thing in the league. The Super Bowl champions, since they've started hosting that week 1 game, have covered over 55% of the time. So I don't think there's any true story behind that. So I capped this with the idea that the Chiefs are going to start out basically how I expect, but also knowing that they were not a good team against the spread last year. The Chiefs were 10-4, or sorry, the Chiefs were 4-10 against the spread last year, with teams getting over 3.5 points. So that's the entire year. Anytime they had a team getting over 3.5, they were 4-10 against the spread. A lot of those games were probably 7.5, 8 points. The 6.5 seems almost trappy to me. Like I would prefer to get 7.5, but you have to take into consideration that the Lions are projected to be a better team this year. And I think that's factored into this. Normally we probably would have seen 8.5, maybe 9.5 in years past. But this Lions team is expected to win 10 games and arguably contend for their division. So 6.5 seems about right for a Thursday night opener. I do see some of the comments here. I'm trying to get to some of those as well as we get further into the podcast. But I'll just post this one right here. Yeah, so pass catching on the running backs versus the Chiefs. If you guys like that, go for it. They love to definitely use the running backs in the passing game. Again, my preference is that I wait a couple weeks before I start hitting props because I want to collect some data on how guys are going to play. But the Kansas City Chiefs are a team that their system is their system. We've seen it for the last 6-7 years. With Patrick's been the starting quarterback about 6 years. So we've seen it. So they're a team like what they're going to do. So if you feel comfortable with taking the props on that, that's fine. Also to note, Chris Jones isn't looking like he's going to play. I think that's going to be a big deciding factor here too. And worst case scenario, the Lions give me a backdoor cover. They are pretty good for that. But I expect a competitive game. And I expect the Lions to meet expectations for at least the first couple weeks. And I'm not going to think anything less of the Chiefs not covering. I mean, they're still a good team, but the NFL is more competitive over the last couple of years than we've seen in a long time. So taking the points here with the Lions. To divert real quick, though, the Chiefs would be a great teaser, I think, a 6-point teaser. You're essentially going to be betting on the Chiefs to win. I don't think a lot of people have the Lions winning this game outright. So if you think the Chiefs are going to win, you're not sure about the cover, tease the 6, get it down to minus half a point. All they got to do is win, and then you're good to go. I actually have the Chiefs in my teaser of the week, which I will cover at the end of this show. So stay tuned for that. The second game that I have on my list here, Panthers at the Falcons. Falcons are laying 3.5 right now. The over-unders at 39.5. I did see on some sites that the Falcons are laying 4 now. So there used to be a thing about key numbers. I think it was 7-3. Like if you were on the 3, you wanted to be 2.5. If you're betting the favorite, you want to be 3.5 if you're betting the dog. If you're on the 7, you want 6.5. If you're betting the favorite, you want 7.5 if you're taking the dog. I think we're going to see some of that change a little. One of the podcasts I like to listen to is Even Money podcast with Ross Tucker and Steve Fesnick. Fesnick is just a ridiculous mathematician. He's a numbers guy through and through. And he talks about variances and percentages a lot. And I think he's collecting some data on whether or not this introduction of analytics in the NFL now, where guys are going for it on fourth and shorts rather than punting. Guys are going for two in situations when they usually would settle for just the 1 point extra point. How does that change the key number? So in this case, I'm not too worried about the 3.5 with the Falcons. I think, if anything, we're gonna get some missed extra points and so forth. So as a super contest contestant, I'm okay with laying the 3.5 with the Falcons. If I were able to buy the hook, I would just buy down to 3 for the Falcons, just to be on the safe side. But the Panthers are not a good team to me this year. I had high hopes for Bryce Young. I love Frank Wright. Icky, their left tackle, is one of my favorite left tackles coming out of his class. He has not looked good, and I think that's going to be a big issue for Bryce Young to get comfortable. They just during preseason, man, like they use their starters a lot in preseason, and I wasn't paying too much attention to Bryce and the receivers as much as I was paying attention to the line, because for me, a rookie quarterback, it all starts up front. If he's comfortable, especially if you come from a place like Alabama where your pockets are generally clean, if you can transition to the NFL with generally clean pockets, I feel like it makes it a little bit quicker acclimation to the speed of the game and how everything works. But I just find it hard to think that he's going to be able to get comfortable. And I know a lot of people probably don't go that deep into a bet. But if your offensive line is not good, it's going to be a long season for you. Also, Brian Barnes, Brian Burns, he's not going to be practicing. It looks like they're having a contract dispute. He's their best edge rusher. He has game-changing ability, and he would be the most disruptive part of their defense up front. I think him not practicing and potentially not playing also gives me a little bit more comfortable feeling that the Falcons will sustain drives a lot better than they usually do. But there's not a lot of positive data supporting Falcons or Panthers. Frank Wright is god awful against the spread in week 1. He's 0-4-1 against the spread in week 1. The Falcons are 1-7 against the spread in week 1 games in Arthur Smith's tenure. Arthur Smith, the Falcons head coach, is the least profitable coach against the spread at home since he got hired. So why am I taking the Falcons? Because the Panthers are just not good. that's my thought process behind it. And then there's strong data supporting fading the first start of a rookie quarterback who was picked number 1 overall. Rookie quarterbacks, number 1 overall picked, are 7-9 against the spread in week 1. They are 1-13 in their first start in general. The last number 1 pick to win a straight up game in their first start was David Carr in 2002, I think is what I got 2022 down here. That had to be a typo. So I'm thinking 2002 was David Carr. So fading the rookie quarterbacks and fading them in their first start seems to be the way to go. Obviously, there could be some exceptions to that depending on the situation, but I don't think we have that this year. Between Stroud and Bryce Young, their situations don't look good. Anthony Richardson situation does not look good from a gambling standpoint. So I don't think anybody should be too concerned with fading those guys. All right. The third game, which is part of my, again, 3 dogs, 2 favorites. Eagles at the Patriots. That line is wrong. The Patriots are actually plus 3.5. So I apologize for that typo. But the Patriots are plus 3.5. Eagles laying 3.5 on the road over under 45. Me personally, not trying to disrespect the Patriots or Belichick or their legacy, but we have to move on from Tom Brady. I feel like a lot of the minds that the Patriots have gotten since Tom Brady has left have been with data that included Tom Brady. And the Patriots were so dominant with Tom Brady. Uh, and I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out, was it Bill? Was it Brady? Who was the biggest reason why this team was so successful in the dynasty? And I am one of those folks that's, I have no choice but to lean that is Brady. The Matt Jones era hasn't been great. He's 3-10 against the spread as an underdog, 0-7 last year as a dog. It's the third time since 2004 that the Patriots have been a week one dog. And again, most of those years included Tom Brady. Tom Brady, or sorry, it was Jimmy Garoppolo and I think Matt Jones were the two quarterbacks where they opened as dogs. They are 1-1 against the spread without Tom Brady as an opener, so this is their third time. Jalen Hurts isn't that great against the spread on the road either. He's 6-3 against the spread on the road. He's 3-9 against the spread as a favorite. But for me, having watched the Eagles, their draft, their preseason, knowing that they're returning a lot of guys from last year's Super Bowl contending team, the expectations this year, I just think there's too much talent on Philly to be afraid to go after the Patriots here. I also Jamie, I'm sorry. I was reading it. I'm not sure if I consider him I don't consider him great as a rookie, but I mean he wasn't awful either. I just don't think he was what I would consider great. And then one of those things too is from a gambling standpoint and an analytical standpoint, they don't always align. Somebody can put up godly numbers, do everything right. Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is a good quarterback at all. I think he's overrated. But against the spread, he's been one of the best quarterbacks out there. You could probably give most of that credit to the defense, but either way, however you cut it, if you look at his numbers against the spread, he's a top 10 quarterback. When I look at him on the film, when I look at him in games, I would not put him in my top 10. I'm sorry. I don't think he is. But again, that's how it is sometimes. Same way with DFS. It doesn't always align with actual production on the field and what you're betting on. So again, I like the Eagles just to have the talent advantage here. They're faster, they're more athletic, and they're a seasoned team with a chip on their shoulder. I think opening with the Patriots is a good thing for them because you still can't take Bill lightly, but I don't think the Patriots have that much talent. So it'll be a good opening road test for them. Um, I am in the more or less the minority here though. Although 51% of the money right now is on the Eagles to cover, I definitely think that there will be some pullback here. And I haven't talked about that on any of my other bets, but this is a line that I can see doing some reverse line movement. I can see where the Eagles will bump up to 4, but money is still slowly but surely coming in on the Patriots to cover. So bet at your own risk on this game. Again, I don't think there's really a right or wrong answer in regards to like somebody calling you crazy because you took the Patriots or calling you crazy because you took the Eagles. But just be mindful that this line movement might not correlate with the betting percentages, and that's just because the Patriots are still one of the more popular teams to put money on. So again, I like the Eagles here at -3.5. All right, next game, a game that I was very surprised it even hit my board. Packers at the Bears. The Bears are favored by 1, over under 43. As an NFL gambler over the last couple years, there have been times where I've looked at a line and I have thought to myself, there is no way. There is no way. And probably 70% of the time, the no way has happened. And this isn't necessarily that crazy of a line, but I have to stop and pause because if you asked 10 fans, probably 8 or 9 are going to pick the Bears because Justin Fields is a dynamic quarterback. and the Packers lost Aaron Rodgers, there hasn't been much talk about the Packers. The Packers actually have offensively since Aaron Rodgers left. I think they're at the bottom of the league in how much money they've put into the offense. However, the X and O in me and the gambler in me says that there is no way the Bears should ever be favored in a game this year. I don't care if the Packers lose. The Bears should not be a 1-point favorite over the Packers. That line doesn't look right to me. I am not a fan of Jordan Love. I didn't like him at Utah State. I was hypercritical of him throughout his backup tenure at in Green Bay, but he looked decent during preseason. And when I say he looked decent, I meant he was processing, he was executing, and he was making the throws asked of him. And if you can do that on a consistent basis, you're going to be successful in the NFL, especially when you got a guy like Matt LaFleur, who is an absolute monster against the spread. He was a monster with Aaron Rodgers, and he's a monster without Aaron Rodgers against the spread. Like he's 13-4 against the spread as a dog, 12-0 against the spread as a dog with Aaron Rodgers, 1-0 with Jordan Love. Overall, Matt LaFleur is 42-29 against the spread. You can't overlook that. You can't. I'm sorry. And honestly, even if the gap between Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love is the gap that was between Tom Brady and Matt Jones, the Bears are not the Eagles, if we want to do a correlation. So I don't know what to expect from the Packers and the Bears in the sense of how their season plays out, but I know in my heart of hearts that the Bears should not be favored in this line. It doesn't sit right with me. I'm going to take the Packers. I'll take them outright. If I'm getting the Packers +1, I might even consider doing them in a teaser. One of the red flags to me, and I love Justin Fields, and I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart, and I probably sound like JT O'Sullivan too. He did not look good during preseason. He didn't execute a lot of things that really should have been executed. And the main glaring flag to me was that he did not see the big time plays, like the bombs, like the plays where he's bought himself time. There's a guy 25 yards down the field, make that throw type stuff. No, he was too quick to check down, didn't seem comfortable. They only had 3 preseason games, so I don't think there'll be much change between what I saw in week 3 of preseason and then a week of practice and then coming into week 1. So some of these teams, and the Bears being one of them, I think they start off a little slow. Expectations are higher for them. They do have more playmakers on offense, but I just think it's a little too early to be putting them as favorites. So I'm going the opposite way with the Packers here. And then my last game of my 5 is a banger. Everybody loves these games. Sunday night, Cowboys at the Giants. Giants getting 3.5, over under 46.5. I talked about Dabble in the beginning of the show a little about how good they were against the spread. The Giants were 10-2 against the spread last year. 10-2 against the spread. In those 12 games, they won 6 outright, lost 5, and then tied. So that's the straight. I'm like, you got to give them a lot of credit for what they did last year. Now, I will say, having did a preseason preview on the Giants, I think this year's schedule is going to be really tough for them. But I also think that this might be the rare occasion where they don't get owned by the Cowboys. And when it comes to that division, Dak Prescott owns the Cowboys. Dak owns the NFC East like Rodgers owned the NFC North, like Brady used to own the AFC East. Actually, Brady had rough times in Miami. There's no place that Dak goes in the NFC East and he doesn't dominate against the spread. Dak is 24-10 against the spread in the NFC East. He is the 6th most profitable primetime QB. Daniel Jones is 5-6 against the spread in prime time, and sadly, one of the least profitable quarterbacks in prime time. Almost has a little bit of Kirk Cousins in him when it comes to prime time, but Kirk can't cover or win. So at least he's got 5 out of 11 covers. But I think the Giants are primed to start hot and fizzle out at the end of the year. I think the Cowboys are primed to start a little slow and build up to being the contender, if not arguably the surprise winner of the NFC East. I think a lot of people still think the Eagles are going to win the NFC East, but the Cowboys should be competitive, even with Tony Pollard being out. I just think the idea of getting rid of and I'm drawing a blank on the offensive coordinator. I can't stand him, but the idea of getting rid of their old offensive coordinator and allowing a little bit more creative freedom for Dak Prescott, I think should help them. Again, not trying to get too much into the X and O's, but I think we got the Cowboys. We have to give them a little bit of time to grow into this new idea of the system that they're going to be running, centered solely around Dak Prescott, with Dak Prescott making calls and doing the game plans himself, etc. I think once they get acclimated with that, they'll be fine. The Giants getting 3.5 here. The NFC East, even though Dak owns the NFC East, I have this thing about trying to keep the number between 3.5 and 5 on the NFC East when the teams are competitive. So if the Giants are in tank mode, sure, let's rock with the Cowboys. But I think being game one, a lot of adrenaline. They had a great preseason. Everybody's comfortable. Saquon's back. I'm gonna take my points with the Giants here at 3.5, and think that the Cowboys either win by a field goal or the Giants win outright. I don't think there's going to be much in between. I don't see a 1-2 win by the Cowboys. It's either win by a field goal or Giants win outright somehow. With the over-under, I will give you this bit of advice. The over-under 46.5. The under is 18-6-1 in the last 25 games. Last 25 home games with the Giants. 18-6-1. So just keep that in mind. That is a hefty trend there of the under being 18-6-1 with Giants home games. Mike McCarthy's 0-3 straight up and 1-2 against the spread in week 1. Does he offset Dak Prescott? Who knows? But I'm going to bet on Dabble and this team getting me a cover here, and that's my top 5 right now. For my honorable mention games are games that I could go back and forth and take out a game here and there and replace depending on line movement. My first honorable mention game was the Chargers and the Dolphins. So the Dolphins are traveling to the Chargers. If this was like the middle of the year type thing where travel kind of plays a part, I would probably be all over the Chargers. But I think last year's game kind of gives the wrong impression. The Chargers, if I recall last year, they had like a whole West Coast swing. They got banged up against the Niners, and then they had to go play the Chargers. Being that they're starting fresh, no in between games, I think this will be a little bit different. I would take my points over 3.5 with the Dolphins. At 3, you're probably still safe with the Chargers. One of the things that I don't like about the Chargers is their coach, Staley. He just doesn't have any real rhythm to how he does things. It's hard to call. He might go for it in his own territory, or he might punt when he's in the opposing territory, and it could go for a long field goal. So you just never know with him sometimes. So if I'm getting more points, I want the Dolphins. I think their offense is going to be explosive, or even more explosive this year. And defensively, I think they'll be okay. Even with Jalen Ramsey going down, I think they'll be okay. There should be some transition going on with Justin Herbert and his Kellen Moore. There we go. His new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore. They don't do a lot of preseason play for the starters in in Los Angeles. So that might also play into them starting slow. because again, you got a new system, new offensive coordinator. You didn't really do a lot of live game simulations during preseason. The Dolphins are going to come in, they're gelled. They already know what they're going to do. They're going to have rhythm. So again, anything over 3, let me get the Dolphins here. The other game was honorable mention Titans at the Saints. I'm pretty high on the Saints this year, probably too high, honestly. But I think they'll be a competitive team. I think Derek Carr and Coach Allen are on the same page. A lot of similarities in Coach Allen's scheme that Derek Carr had when he was in Los Angeles with John Gruden, which was arguably his best years. So there's comfort there. He's got playmakers. He's not afraid to get the playmakers the ball. The backfield, even if Alvin Kamara is sitting out and whatnot, they got a dynamic backfield. They got a two-headed monster now. They should be fine. Defensively, always underrated defense. They just play tough. They play consistent, and they play mistake-free. They don't penalize themselves a lot. You don't see the Saints getting a lot of defensive pass interferences or jumping off sides or making these like silly mental mistakes that plague some teams. So if the game is close, they can pull it out if they're depending on their defense. And I think this game will be close. And I also think that they've got the front that Derrick Henry should not run over them like he does the Jags. So I like the Saints in that game. And then the last game in my honorable mention was the Bengals traveling to the Browns. Browns right now are getting 2.5. Bengals are one of my teams that if I did do a preseason podcast and talked about, expectations for betting, I don't think the Bengals are going to be as good as everybody thinks record wise. Team wise, they'll still be just as good as everybody thinks, but the record won't reflect that this year, I don't think. A couple factors for that. I think the Steelers are getting better and they're young. I think the Ravens obviously will be better with Lamar back. And then Deshaun Watson has a year under his belt. Hopefully he's going to get back to some of that rookie of the year, whatever made him great in Houston years. And I think that's going to play a part in there as well. It's just everybody else is, all things are equal now. And so I expect them to kind of even out. I actually, when I was in Vegas, I took a ticket on them going under 11.5 wins, but not like anything crazy. I literally have them at 11 wins just because it's so competitive. So with that in mind, one of the teams who has given them trouble, even when they're at full strength, the Cleveland Browns. I can't explain it. Maybe it's just a division thing. We do have some divisions where certain teams just beat up on each other, and the Browns and Bengals might be that particular team in this division. So I don't know what to expect from the Browns, but I am more positive that the Browns will be better this year than I think the Bengals will be better this year. And the last team to give the Bengals an ATS loss in the regular season was the Browns. So getting them opening day, they're going to be fired up, man. Everybody's healthy. Myles Garrett gets to go against an offensive line that's still not that great. The health of Joe Burrow will be a concern all year long. I'm one of those people that I am skeptical that he's even going to make it through the whole year, unfortunately, just because he takes so much of a beating behind that offensive line. And it seems like no matter what they do to fix it, doesn't really get any better. Fans forget sacks are not always the story on how much a QB gets hit. Like guys still get hit, even if they don't get sacked. And Joe Burrow is one of those guys that takes a lot of hits. So I'm a little skeptical here on this line. And so I would take the Browns money line for what would be a mild upset for the first week. But I have them in my honorable mention. I'm going to see how it gets bet. Because again, that game so far, down the line, as far as this week goes, most of the action has been on the Lions and Chiefs for NFL. And then a little bit of it has been on the Patriots Eagles. So I want to see what the Sharps are doing with that Browns Bengals game my lean is the Browns, and more than likely, if I do switch out any of my picks, the Browns will go in my top 5. So that is my gambling podcast for week 1. I will leave you with my teaser of the week. Since I don't have a prop this week, I promise by week 3 I'm gonna have props. I just want to get at least 2 weeks of data to figure out what's going on. And then also I will plug in, if you're looking for prop bet help early, check out the DFS people, because that's literally what they build their lineups on, is guys producing. So if you see a ton of people putting Justin Jefferson in their lineup, then it's more than likely that week Justin Jefferson has a very good matchup. You should look at taking the over on Justin Jefferson's total yards and receptions. Like it's that simple. But my teaser for the week, give me 6 points, Chiefs and Commanders. The Cardinals are not even trying. So if the Commanders lose, I'm going to be blown. I'm going to be blown. And then I really don't think the Lions will beat the Chiefs. It'd be great if they did, because then that obviously means that my bet wins. But I think teaser-wise, I think is safe to say, let's put these two together, probably getting minus 120 on it, and make that our teaser of the week. We got one question here. What do you think about my 4-leg parlay for Thursday? Kelsey over 65, anytime TD, St. Brown 85. I like that. Especially St. Brown and Kelsey receptions. The anytime TD, you always gotta like Kelsey. But I did a TikTok on the Chiefs offense and what it's going to look like this year. I'll be wary of Richie James taking some of Kelsey's red zone targets. I think him and Patty are going to be best friends in the red zone. St. Brown is one of the most underrated receivers, and it's just because he gets hurt every 2 catches and he comes back after that. But yeah, if he's on the field, when he's on the field, that Lions offense is significantly better. They look so much better when he's on the field. So I think that'll be good. I think that's a good parlay, especially at 8-1. I don't think that's bad at all. But yeah, so that is the week 1 podcast. You can follow me on at ActivelyLazy85 on Twitter. I do have a TikTok at ib.network, the number 3. On my TikTok, I do more X and O analysis than gambling. I'm trying to get more active on gambling on Twitter. I'm trying to give out some winners on Twitter. But right now, like last week, it was college football. I went 11-10 on college football, but I had Duke outright to win, and then I had Colorado to cover. Wish I had Colorado to go outright. But those were my biggest boosts. I had Florida State money line too. That helped my units as well because they were a dog. But yeah, so follow me on Twitter. If I find anything interesting about Thursday night's game, I'll post it, information there. Like, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and I will be back next week with an update on how my super contest went. You guys take care.